Andy White and Tim Finn, welcome to Australian Musician.
Hi,
Thanks.
Greg.
I was wondering how you guys are and where you sit on the World Happiness Index today.
Well, it's St. Patrick's Day, Greg, so
Yeah,
pretty high
I
up.
agree.
I can feel that Ireland's going to go up from like 16 to at least the top 10. Maybe near New Zealand, Tim? Possibly.
Well, apparently 800,000 New Zealanders are Irish, are of Irish descent, which, we grew up in Te Awamutu, which is a small town. We had a few friends who were Irish, who are among our best friends of my parents, I mean, mainly. And we all felt very special because we not only were Catholics, we were Irish descent and all this. Turns out it was common as muck. So,
The reason I mention the World Happiness Index is because there's a single that you guys have got out called the Happiness Index. Lists are funny things, aren't they? Happiest country, best guitarist, best song ever, all compiled, I guess, to provoke discussion. But ultimately, what do they accomplish? What was your thinking with that song?
I mean, I have to say that the king of Bhutan is a Buddhist. It's a Buddhist kingdom, and he was getting at the idea of let's examine ourselves, because Buddhists are obviously always looking inward. And it's just a classic example of the way humanity takes a really beautiful kind of pure idea like that and twists it and makes it into a competition. And so, Finland's on top, Chad's on the bottom. Bad luck for Chad, but do the people of Chad even know or care, and why should we do that? It's meant to be like, if Chad wants to examine itself, that's what this King of Bhutan was on about. If Australians want to look at themselves, if New Zealanders want to look at themselves, or individually, if we want to look at ourselves, but somehow we always play it out there as kind of law of the jungle and dog eat dog thing. So it's kind of interesting. The irony of that, I suppose, drew us in, and then we just came up with some whacking good guitar ideas. And actually, that song is notable. I will mention this to you only. It's an exclusive because you do represent without any, I'm saying this sincerely, that the Musician magazine is about music, and I actually play it's the only time I've ever played a guitar solo on a record.
All right.
And I did this electric guitar solo through GarageBand input, and came sounding kind of puny, but the melody of it was really good. And John Leckie, who mixed the album, ran it through another amp immediately, and it came out sounding like $1 million. It's the melody line that runs through the outro, not really a solo; it's more like a motif. But
Oh,
the only
stick
time
with
I've ever
solo, Tim. Stick with solo.
solo, yeah. So that's just for you, Greg.
Yeah. So what was that guitar that you used?
I've got a Telecaster which I've had for about 30 years, and I don't really use it much. But there you go. And our daughter plays guitar a bit. She turns 20 today, and she's got a beautiful. It's a teardrop Jansen, which Jansen was New Zealand electric guitar, and they actually made electric guitars here. I wish they still did. We used to make a lot of things. We had our own car and everything. But this
Wow.
Jansen teardrop is a beautiful thing. And she played on something else I did a while back. She sings on this record. She has one line in that song, It's Family. A beautiful thing she did for Family Forever. It's Family Forever. And because her grandfather, my dad, had just died. And so she was able to put all that lament into that one line. So yeah, there's family connections run right through the record in many ways, really.
So when did you two first meet?
Ooh. In
92,
the
90.
Yeah, before, like the alt record, we wrote it in '94, and but Tim was already hanging out in Dublin, so maybe '92 or three, I
Yeah.
think. Yeah, Tim arrived. It was amazing. Like he met Liam in London, came to stay at this beautiful shared house we had in Dun Laoghaire, which is like the port. Well, it's not really the port of Dublin. It's like a town where the ferries come in from Wales, and it's beautiful. Like, and we'd go swimming at this place called the 40 Foot, which if you've seen an Apple TV series called Bad Sisters, have you seen it? They all meet there.
I've seen previews.
Oh, it's
I'm going to see
brilliant.
that.
It's so funny. It's hilarious. And they're bad, those sisters. And
What's it on? What platform is it on?
it's on Apple TV.
Oh, right.
And it's funny that they all meet there, and that's where we used to meet. And a fan sent me a photograph of an interview that Liam did years later, like a few years ago. And he said that he was talking about Alt, about the three of us meeting, and he said the sea holds the memory. And I sent it to Tim, and Tim wrote back with the first verse of the first song on this record, and that's how we started writing this record many years after having first met.
Yeah.
The Sea Holds the Memory, you say it was the catalyst for the album.
Yeah.
It's the first song on the album. Does the track order, is that important to you guys these days?
It is. Andy came up with it, really. You know, it is important. Yeah. If you're going to make an album, well, you know, then you have to think about it. For some people now, they don't even know what albums are really now, whether they're a valid form anymore. But we like to think they are. And it's not just being nostalgic, you know, it's a beautiful form. It's like, why not repeat it for another 100 years, you know, 12 songs, 10 songs, that kind of, you know, it just seems to work somehow, like a little concert, you know.
Yeah, there's like a narrative, and it's hard to get it. I mean, you start off with the chronological narrative, Greg, so you've got the order in which you wrote the songs, because one would naturally affect the other. But you are trying to tell a story with the whole record. I mean, that's what I've always done. I'm sure Tim's always thought of the order of songs, and then you maybe start with the chronology, and then you start to adjust it a little as you go ahead, because it doesn't always work like that. And we brought forward some of the songs, like The Sea Holds the Memory always felt like track one because it started off the record. And then My Regeneration, I think we wrote that a little later, but we brought that up to the front because, again, it just sets the album off in the best way possible. And then we start telling the different stories, like Bundle of Their Dreams, which talks about our parents. And we thought maybe we'd write about our children, but actually our parents are quite present on this record, which is fun, actually. But I'm glad you brought up the order thing, because it's obviously something people are thinking about.
Yeah.
And we spend a lot of time doing that kind of.
Yeah. With many of the songs you're singing together at the same time, there are tracks where one or the other will take the verse. Was it a matter of who brought the song to the project sings the verse? Is that how it worked?
Yeah, it probably is different for every song. We'd have to look at a list. I mean, there were some times that Andy would send an email to me, like Three Sheep Grazing was an email that Andy sent where he was recounting what a friend had said to him, or perhaps you sent a direct quote, maybe you copied and pasted it, I don't know, but about the idea of overcrowding, you know, on farms and just the commons, you know, like the fact that we used to have land that was for all of us, and then that's all kind of disappearing in England. It was kind of like along those lines, wasn't it, Andy? And
yeah, that's right. So I'd send an idea, and then Tim would send an actual, and it wasn't like me going, what about this as an idea for a song, Tim? It was like, though that was probably subliminal, but Tim would send an entire verse and chorus, or the other way around. He would send a chorus and I would send back verses. So there's a lot of a conversation going on in it, and it's what you've said is perceptive. It's like when you hear somebody singing a verse, probably they wrote that. Not always, but probably.
I
Yeah.
hadn't really thought about that, but yeah, that makes sense.
And I remember the first record I can ever remember is Revolver, like being played at parties. I remember seeing, you remember they used to have a lead vocal. It used to say who was the lead vocal, which was very interesting. And then thinking, I wonder who wrote that. And they must have written that because that's their story they're telling. So yeah, and with the Alt record, we had a couple of songs where, like, there's one called I Decided to Fly, where we'd actually think of the theme, like what was music like for you before you were releasing and writing music? How did music feel for you? How did you feel before that? And then I would write a verse speaking to that, and then Liam would, and then Tim would. So there's 3 different perspectives, and then we all sing the chorus. I decided to fly, and that kind of thing, it's just really attractive. And it almost, when you do a solo record after it, you really miss it, like having 3 perspectives, not just one.
Yeah. Did you
Especially connected, but from different parts of the world as well. That's cool.
did you have a vision for the album sonically, or was it more a matter of just using instrumentation that suited each song?
I mean, as far as I can remember it all, it was very kind of unconscious. Well, Andy did a lot of guitars and bass and harmony. I probably sent piano, acoustic guitar, voice, you know, and then we were just sort of assembling it, and it was getting bigger and bigger in some of the songs. Some of them we kept very spare. And then John Leckie would really be, I would say he was responsible for the sound of the album in the end, because he's a master and he was able to make sense of everything we'd recorded and shape it. And he spent ages on it because it was COVID, and so everybody was just sitting around at home. And I mean, he's always got a few things on, obviously. He's in demand, but he was able to spread our project out over quite a long time, wasn't he, Andy?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so he just made it. He's such a good mixer, because that's hard to do, you know. Example, a song like Happiness Index, or there's a few of them where there's quite a lot going on, and undaunted and uncomplaining, he just, you know, he didn't say to us, hey chaps, you know, like maybe we should thin this out a bit. He just basically took seriously all the colors we were throwing at him, and made a painting, you know. And he, yeah, hats off to John. We were very lucky. He's a friend of Andy's, and he was happy to do it, but under normal circumstances it would have been a long shot to go for somebody of that caliber, you know.
Yeah, because sometimes mixers, Greg, when you send them things, they really select from all the ideas you've sent to them. Some amazingly expensive American guy will remove all the beauty that you've spent ages putting in, that you thought was beautiful. And I mean, that's one approach. But John really thought that if we had an idea, the 2 of us, then it was definitely should be on there, which was great.
Yeah.
So how different can an album be in the hands of a different mixer?
Ah,
Very different.
all very different. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, these days, especially the way that the software is, you can do extraordinary things with a mix. I mean, I remember when Neil and I made albums back in the day, we would sometimes get Bob Clearmountain to mix them, and he was a master at that time, and you know, was very expensive, but he was worth it. And he would go through rigorously every track, and if something needed tuning, or if something was out of time, you know, with the limited technology he had available, he would work on that and make it work. Because these days it's the click of a mouse, and you know, people, the refining that can happen is, you know, extraordinary. I mean, there's things like time stretch now, and you can actually change the pitch of an entire track, or work on elements of it to bring them into time with each other, etc., etc. Things that, you know, in the days of tape you would never contemplate. And so a mixer, I'm waffling a bit, but to get to the point, a mixer sometimes will assume the role of co-production, or, you know, because they do so much and are very sought after, the good ones, because they make it sound like gold. I mean, it's just amazing what comes back, you know.
Yeah, and he was working with Tim in his house in Auckland with a really good microphone and really good drum. Well, but only 2 microphones, and his piano, which is on his left as we're looking at it.
This piano here, it was what I used, and it's just a Beckstein upright, and I would literally put the mic. I mean, I'm absolutely primitive, so I just put the mic somewhere near it, you know, and play the piano, and it came out sounding, you know, pretty average, like dull, and sort of, you know, the room all over it. And John would again fashion it so it sits quite lovely in that track sheet, 3 Sheep Grazing. There's a lovely piano line I played, if I do say so myself. And I thought, oh well, that probably won't be heard in the end, you know, it's muffled, but I knew it was good. Well, John just brought it to life, you know, and it sits there beautifully. Didn't complain. He didn't say, can you do that again, or go into a proper studio. So
And with John, it's true with that track, Tim. I remember putting the sheep on the end and thinking, ooh, and I was in the studio doing the rough mix thinking, how loud should the sheep be really? And with John, you're absolutely confident the sheep are exactly the right volume, which they are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and on a, if that's a funny point, like a serious point, it's like how loud are the vocals? Because singers are really bad at knowing that. And I've heard My Regeneration on the radio and just thought, oh right, he's absolutely right. It's exactly the right volume. Whereas Tim and I would probably think, oh, they're not loud enough because we're the singers. But actually, it's great to hand it over to somebody who's just going to go, this is the level they should be at.
Was that on Triple R?
Yeah, I heard it, and it sounded great on the radio.
Wish I'd have heard it. Damn, we could have probably got. I probably could have got it as well.
Right, it's on. Yeah, they all stream now. It's great. I mean, you can hear them. Yeah, you can hear them on the internet for sure.
Can you go back? Like, can I listen back to that?
Yeah, I'll send you a link to it. Yeah,
brilliant.
Yeah, they played it. They've played it loads, which is good.
I have to say that when you hear a song on the radio at the time it's being played, this won't be quite as good for me, but when you do hear it at the time, it's the best thing ever. I remember the old days. You know, you're in a taxi or you're driving in from the airport, got a hangover, you're tired, you're bored with life, and the next minute your song comes on the radio, which is hard to get. You know, as we all know, airplay's still, you know, and it was very hard back then. But you get a song on the radio, and it's just like, you know, because you and thousands of other people are listening at the same time. You know, that's the best feeling.
In regard to songwriting, how are your cut-off valves? How do you know when a song's done?
A work of art is never finished, it's only abandoned.
That's what people say. I mean, I always know when it's finished. I mean, we both knew on this record, you know, there might have been a very odd tweak going on the lyric, but not much. So yeah, I think we do know when it just feels right, you know. Maybe that comes from experience. Yeah,
I don't think that quotation's really relevant all the time. Sometimes it just is finished. Actually, the opposite. Like, it's done. That's good, and that's a good feeling.
It is.
Yeah. You'll be taking these songs out on the road. Do you have you arrived at what the band setup will be, and will any of the songs be challenging to produce live?
They would all be challenging. Would be impossible, I think, because we wouldn't be able to afford the kind of band that we'd need to play it. You know, to be honest.
We need the orchestra, Greg, as well. But we were thinking our children could maybe play it. That would be good.
That would be good. They can all play instruments now. So I guess the short answer is we'd love to do it, but the long answer is quite involved. You know.
But on the other hand, we could strip it down. We could strip it back.
We could strip it back.
Yeah, you never know. Yeah, but they're beautiful songs. I'm just really curious as to how they're going to be heard and how they're going to progress, really.
Have you played any of them yet, Andy?
No, I was thinking of that, Tim, because I was actually, when we did the Happiness Index video, I have to learn them again. I almost have to learn them again, but they do come back. They're really unusual. I love learning them because they're not written the way I might write generally. So that is a challenge, and I think we're all just looking for challenges, Greg, all the time, and that's like another one for sure. And I'd love to go back and actually do that. I don't feel like I can't play them on my own. I have to play them with Tim.
Yeah. Right, guys. Well, I suppose we should wrap up because you've got some more interviews to do. It's been great to chat, and we'll catch you another time.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Great. Okay, guys. See you, Tim.
See you, Andy.
See you.